In the bustling halls of St. Catherine's Hospital, where the constant beeping of machines and the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes filled the air, there was an unsettling presence that lingered throughout the unit. This presence wasn't a patient or a passing doctor. It was the cruel and vindictive nature of Nurse Evelyn Harris. To the patients, she was a stern, no-nonsense nurse who could be counted on to get the job done. To the staff, however, she was a nightmare, especially to a young and eager nurse assistant named Clara Thompson. Clara had only been working at St. Catherine's for 6 months, fresh out of nursing school, full of ambition and the desire to make a real difference in people's lives. But from the moment she started working on the floor with Nurse Harris, it became clear that her dream of working in healthcare was about to face its first real challenge. Nurse Harris had been working at the hospital for over 15 years, and she had built a reputation as someone who got things done efficiently. She was a skilled nurse, but her methods were harsh, and her demeanor even harsher. She had little patience for new staff, especially those she deemed unworthy or unqualified. Clara, with her fresh face and eager attitude, quickly found herself the target of Nurse Harris's cold glares and sarcastic remarks. "Don't bother me with your questions, Clara. I've been doing this job far longer than you. Figure it out yourself," Evelyn would snap, rolling her eyes each time Clara came to her for guidance. At first, Clara tried to brush it off. She reasoned that Nurse Harris was probably just having a bad day. But day after day, the cruelty continued. Whenever Clara made a mistake, even a small one, Nurse Harris would make sure the entire team knew about it. Her voice would rise, sharp and biting, humiliating Clara in front of the other nurses and sometimes even in front of patients. "Clara, did you really think putting the blood pressure cuff on that way was acceptable? We're not here to play pretend." Evelyn would sneer as Clara tried to correct her mistake. The bullying didn't stop at words. Nurse Harris would often give Clara the most grueling and undesirable tasks, from cleaning up after difficult patients to working in the most physically demanding areas of the hospital, all while making sure Clara knew it was her punishment for being incompetent. The other staff members, too afraid to cross Evelyn, turned a blind eye and said nothing. After all, she was an experienced nurse who knew how to get things done. But the bullying didn't only stop at Clara. The patients, too, felt the sharp sting of Nurse Harris's temper. One elderly patient, Mrs. Jenkins, a sweet woman recovering from hip surgery, had been asking for her pain medication for over an hour. Clara had checked in on her, reassured her, and promised that Nurse Harris would be in soon. But when Nurse Harris finally arrived, she was already in a bad mood, and Mrs. Jenkins's request for pain relief was just another point of contention. "Mrs. Jenkins, I told you not to ring the bell every 5 minutes. Nurse Harris snapped, walking into the room and standing at the foot of the bed. "I'm not your personal nurse. Stop bothering everyone with your petty complaints." Clara, standing just outside the room, could hear the harshness in Evelyn's voice. She knew that Mrs. Jenkins was in pain, and it tore her apart to watch the elderly woman shrink back, looking down at the sheets with embarrassment. It was one of the lowest moments Clara had ever experienced at St. Catherine's. She watched as Nurse Harris dismissed Mrs. Jenkins's plea for relief, leaving the patient to suffer in silence. It was in that moment that something inside Clara snapped. She couldn't stand by any longer, not as a witness to this treatment, not as a victim herself. The very next day, Clara decided to stand up. As Nurse Harris barked orders at Clara, assigning her more tasks than she could manage, Clara looked her squarely in the eye. "Nurse Harris," she said, her voice shaking but resolute, "I need to speak with you." Nurse Harris raised an eyebrow, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "What is it now, Clara? Don't waste my time." "This isn't okay," Clara began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "The way you treat me and the patients is not acceptable. I'm here to learn, to help, not to be belittled every day." For a brief moment, Nurse Harris stood still, her face hardening. The silence between them was thick with tension. Clara could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but she didn't look away. She had to do this. "You have no right to talk to me like that," Nurse Harris finally sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "I've been a nurse for years. You'll never make it if you keep acting like this." Clara took a deep breath. "I may be new, but I know what respect looks like. And I don't think you respect anyone here, least of all me. If you can't treat me like a colleague, then I'll have to go to management." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Clara could see the flicker of anger in Nurse Harris's eyes, but she refused to back down. "Fine. Go ahead," Nurse Harris said, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Let's see how far that gets you." Clara didn't hesitate. She went straight to the hospital's management and filed a formal complaint detailing the verbal abuse and mistreatment she had endured, not just for herself, but for the patients as well. Clara explained how Nurse Harris had repeatedly belittled her and made life miserable for both the staff and the patients. She even mentioned the incident with Mrs. Jenkins. It didn't take long for the management to launch an investigation into Nurse Harris's behavior. When confronted, Nurse Harris denied everything, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The patients spoke up, the staff who had witnessed the bullying came forward, and Clara's bravery became the turning point. The management decided to take immediate action. Nurse Harris was given a formal warning, and after a series of disciplinary meetings, she was reassigned to a different floor. The bullying ceased almost overnight. For Clara, the victory wasn't just about the end of the harassment. It was about reclaiming her voice and standing up for what was right. She had shown that silence in the face of bullying only enables it to continue. By speaking up, she had not only stopped the mistreatment, but had set a precedent for others who were too afraid to speak out. In the months that followed, Clara became a beacon of courage to her colleagues. The atmosphere in the hospital slowly began to change. Nurses and assistants alike learned that when they stood together and stood up for themselves, they could create a work environment built on respect and support. The moral of Clara's story spread throughout the hospital. Never allow a bully to control your life. Stand up for yourself, speak out against injustice, and remember that change begins with one person's courage. And as for Clara, she went on to become one of the most respected nurse assistants in the hospital, known not just for her skill and compassion, but for her unwavering courage in the face of adversity.